got kicked out of school, taught myself how to DJ, and that was the way out for me. And DJing ended up becoming my hobby / job, but it was something that gave me a purpose, and that was the first time ever where I actually felt like maybe this is what I'm meant to do. Maybe I'm not meant to be the property person or the bank person or the recruitment person, which is the same thing that everyone else was going into.
The one and only Josh White.
Josh White.
Josh White.
He's the founder of CanO Water. Lovely cans of still and sparkling water.
My experience when starting CanO Water was not of a good one. Because people were extremely negative about why on earth would you want to put water in a can.
Welcome to the Redefined podcast, brought to you by the One Club, the world's first invite-only digital private members club. The ambition of this podcast is to explore the untold stories of entrepreneurs, athletes, influencers, and more.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Today we're just going to talk about your personal journey. I know there'll be lots of questions and we've got a Q&A afterwards, but we'll talk about your personal journey, your redefined journey. So I always start this with at the beginning. So the beginning of your life, what was young Josh like?
Wild. I was not your average child. I always felt different. Was sort of I was a happy child. You know, had an amazing and do have an amazing family, but I always yearned for more. I wouldn't say that I wasn't competitive, but I always was a bit crazy. And if someone jumped down 10 stairs, I would jump down 20 stairs, and I was always sort of a bit mental. My parents told me a story of when I was a kid, that all the children would sort of just play together, and they would have to barricade me in on holiday in sunbeds around. So they literally, I was in the middle, and I just always felt different.
Okay.
And that was something that for my childhood, I didn't know why I felt different, and I learned later in life what that was, but I looked around and I never felt normal.
Okay, interesting. The most successful people aren't normal, so yeah. And then moving on to kind of school and studies, what did you study when you were at school?
I didn't really study, and
okay.
I think that was one of my fears, and I speak about it a lot because it's quite awkward for me to sit here and be perceived as an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur was never in what I perceived as to be in my DNA. It wasn't an achievable goal for me. Mm-hmm. I never looked at myself as being that. I never thought that I could ever be that. School life for me was probably some of my most painful days. I suffered severely, which we've spoken about, with addiction and ADHD. I actually got diagnosed with ADHD when I was 11 years old. And I think that, when I talk about not feeling normal, that is where a lot of things started to make a lot of sense of why I was so hyperactive, why I couldn't concentrate, why I'm a visual learner. I couldn't, if I wasn't interested in something, it would feel like I was in Narnia. I'd be in another world.
Absolutely.
But if I was interested in something like art and music, or a TV, I physically could not revise for exams. But if I watched a film, I could tell you every single bit of detail about that program or that film. Music for me was, and still to this day, is an enormous part of my life, part of my journey. One of the things that has sort of got me out of a lot of trouble, and it sort of takes me into another world. And it's this dopamine hit that I crave, mm-hmm. where later in life I've learned a lot of positives about ADHD. But when I got diagnosed with ADHD, it was all negative. It was all sort of like, I was on report at school, and I was always in the bottom sets, and I was looked at as someone that that was probably less than, and my peers, I became the class clown because that was all I really could amount to. That was how I could, that was how I could sort of gain some attention. But to be completely honest with you, as someone, I wasn't someone that was clever or academically achieved anything. So my school years were really painful, and that's where my, I speak very openly about it. That's where my addiction to alcohol very much took. I've got a very addictive personality, and it took over because I found everyday life massively tricky. Because I didn't feel like I fit in. And I used alcohol at a very young age as an escape. Yeah,
we've spoken about that. And so, how long have you been sober for now?
I've been so I haven't drank for about 17 years, but I stopped drinking when I was 15, and I had a blip when I was 19. So this year I will be 14 years clean. So I'm 13 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Great.
Thank you.
And how have you, obviously with that mindset, did you feel that you could go into new business or new work opportunities that were clear ahead? Was that?
I'll be honest with you. When I went into a rehab centre at 15, I was very confused in life. I'll be honest with you. I didn't really find myself until my late 20s, and I sort of lived in this sort of not understanding bubble for many years, and we'll go into my business life. But before business life, there is this Josh finding himself life, and Josh learning about himself. And I would say that one of the biggest things for me has been on my sober journey is I have a clear head, because as an addict you've got an addictive personality, but I would use substances. And substances could be anything from alcohol to cigarettes to shopping to gym. It could be anything. I needed something to take me out of reality, and I think that for me the goal was to get to a place where I didn't need something to take me out of reality. How do I just live in reality and deal with it, without substances? And that was something that was an enormous fear of mine, because the reason I did things was because of fear, and whether it was fear of rejection or failure or I can't deal with this. And I think that was something that for my early years was incredibly important. So I wasn't thinking at all about business. I was literally just thinking like it was like survival mode. I was extremely depressed and extremely fearful, and a lot of my fear, and this is what makes me, why I'm so grateful to be where I am today. A lot of my fear was around my future. I would sit in my bed and worry about the next 10 years. And I wouldn't be able to sleep, and that was a pattern of mine for many years. So it's funny, I get asked a lot of the time, like, what would you tell your younger self? And it's it's like your typical podcast question, and my thing has always been like to not worry and just to go with the flow and go with life, because I looked at everyone else. I never looked at me. I would look at what other not what other people had, but I would look at other people's journeys, and I would look at me as I've always been very unconventional. So I left school. I didn't have any qualifications. I started to do a degree in art. I never really knew where that was going to take me, but I've always been obsessed with music. And one thing that was, that I've been obsessed with since the age of 11 was DJing. DJing for me was something that it took me, it was weird. It was like a drug for me.
Yeah.
And when I was 11 years old, my dad bought me my first pair of DJ decks. And, you know, as someone with ADHD, hobbies are massively, you know, important, because if you find something that you're completely and utterly obsessed with, I've got this hyper-focused mentality, which we'll talk about after, where CanO Water and other parts of my life come into it. But when I hyper-focus into something, I become obsessed.
Yeah.
And I've started to use that as a bit of a superpower, which I've seen today as being a positive. And DJing for me was that. I became completely obsessed with DJing. I got kicked out of school. I would come home and I just basically taught myself how to DJ, and that was like a way out for me. And DJing basically ended up becoming my hobby / job. But it was something that it gave me a purpose, and that was the first time ever where I actually felt like maybe this is something that maybe this is what I'm meant to do. Maybe I'm not meant to be the property person or the bank person or the recruitment person, which is the same thing that everyone else was going into. Maybe it's okay to not do that, because everyone else is doing that, and it was an ego thing, you know. That's what everyone else is doing, but actually maybe it's okay to do something that I love doing and that makes me happy, and not worry about what other people think.
I think that's it. In my life, that's, you know, halted my kind of progression. Is just worrying about what people think, and you would save so much time if you just didn't, obviously. But I want to talk about mentors and the people that kind of pulled you out from that or inspired you to kind of think bigger. So how important are mentors in your life?
I've always been, always have been very afraid to ask for help, and I think that's like something that is. It's not even. It isn't even an ego thing, because I wouldn't actually say that I wouldn't say that I am. I mean, maybe other people would disagree. I'd like to think that I am not an egotistical person. So it's never been an ego thing around asking people for help. It's always been a fear thing of like what people would think. And you know, when we talk about CanO Water, I think a lot of that was smashed, which we'll go into. Do you know what? Mentors and people I admire. So my dad came from nothing. My dad is probably one of my biggest inspirations. He's someone that literally grew up on a council estate, had absolutely nothing, you know, started, had a passion, went into business, he's always been such a hard worker and someone that I've looked at and admired. He's someone that he's never been a materialistic person. He's someone that's done well, but it's never been about money.
Yeah.
It's always been about, he's the richest person because he has a family, and he has everything that he needs, and he's always taught me to be comfortable. And I think that, you know, he's always been a massive inspiration to me throughout my life. And so like mentors wise, I don't think that I've had many at a young age, because I wasn't around many sort of successful. You know, I was around families and family friends, but no one that I sort of used as a mentor. Whereas I do have mentors now here and there, but it's more about inspirations. And you know, we talk about podcasts and even talks like this, where I would get a lot of information from those types of things in my early days of business that would massively help me when shit hit the fan and things went wrong. But I think if we're talking about mentors in general, I think mentors are incredibly important. You know, I get up to 30, 40 messages a week from new founders and even people that have been in business for a long time asking for my help, and I always give my help and advice. I'm very open to give advice, because my experience when starting CanO Water, because I had a failed business before CanO Water, which was probably a very important part of my life as a learning curve. But my experience when starting CanO Water was not of a good one. Because
Okay.
people were extremely negative about why on earth would you want to put water in a can. So I think that there was a lot of doubters, but I think that mentors are massively important,
Yeah.
especially if you want to if you don't know how to get to A to B, people have got the answers.
Great. And let's talk about the transition. So from DJing, and I know you still DJ.
I do.
Is that important to you?
It's important for my mind.
Yeah.
Definitely. Music in general is extremely important for me. So as I mentioned, whether I'm DJing or I am using music as a vehicle to sort of help me navigate my thoughts, and just in times when I am a little bit stressed out, yes, massively important to have that outlet.
Absolutely. And so the transition from that to what you're doing now.
Yeah.
So can we talk about those early days? What was the inspiration?
For CanO Water.
Yeah.
So, it's a weird one. So me and my friends went on a trip to Thailand. We never cared about plastic pollution. I always say to people, and there are people in the room that that knew me growing up. I always say that I was part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Smoked cigarette, flicked out the window, didn't care about the environment. I was, it wasn't on my agenda. Mm-hmm. Now I like to say that I'm part of a solution, and I think that. I'm by no means an environmentalist. We stumbled upon something that was, that came from an idea that sort of spiraled into something absolutely crazy. But essentially, 3 best friends who saw a problem and became completely and utterly obsessed with trying to, is there a solution here? Is there something how can we create a really cool brand that made a difference or can make a difference? And I think 90% of people, and this is why I like talking about my childhood, I think 90% of people would have the idea of, shall we put water in a can? And I think that 90% of people would just be like, no, that's just stupid, and then they'll just get on with their life. And the amount of times where I've sat with friends and we've come up with ideas and they've been wacky before CanO Water, or even during CanO Water when I've come up with an idea, a lot of people, they're very skeptical about disrupting things, or about disruptive brands, and they instantly think of a million ways of how something can't work. Mm-hmm. And that's the way that our DNA, that's the way that we're brought up. And most of the time you'll mention your idea and someone will put it down, and it might be your closest friend. And I think that we went on a journey with CanO Water. The 3 of us had full-time jobs in other worlds, and we started to do some research. None of us had any, we're not scientists. We couldn't create a material that just disintegrated in thin air. We looked at different packaging. That obviously you've got glass, which is already on the market. It is very recyclable. It's a bit too heavy. The carbon footprint of glass isn't the greatest because of its heaviness. A lot of places have banned glass. Could it go up against a plastic bottle? Probably not, because it's not as sort of on the go. You've got Tetra Pak, which is obviously your cartons of milk, which isn't very recyclable because it's fused with aluminium, paper and plastic, and it isn't as recyclable as it might look. And then you look at cans, and cans, a lot of people look at a can and you think, no, that can't be as recyclable, but 70% of cans that were produced in the 1800s are just still in circulation. So this can could have been a million other cans. This can 60 days ago could have been a Coke can, could have been a Red Bull can. 100 years ago this can could have been something else. So they're infinitely recyclable. The infrastructure of cans are incredible. So if you see in American movies, you might see homeless people walking around with cans. That's because cans have an intrinsic value to them. So people, even if you threw this can out of your car window, which I advise not to, someone somewhere will collect it, and it will most probably end up in the recycling centre because it's worth something. And that is why cans have such a high recycling rate. So we sort of stumbled upon this, and we just think to ourselves, why on earth has no one put water in a can? And you know, all of the same things that all of you guys probably thought when you first heard of them, like, you know, you might not have heard of CanO Water before, but if you had, most people think, well, you can't close a can, you can't see the water, is it going to taste weird? Like, it is so weird and so foreign to what we're used to that most people just get scared.
Yeah.
And I think that the three of us and the DNA inside the three of us were like, can I swear?
Go for
Fuck it, we're going to do this. And we are not going to take no as an answer. You know, we grew up in a place and a community where there's a lot of doubters. You know, I grew up in a place where there's a lot of doubters. Everyone knows everyone. And it is very... It can be quite negative and scary because, you know, I had family friends that would say to my dad, like, what is he doing? Why is he doing this? And, you know, you have to sort of just block that all out. And we came up with the idea of CanO Water, and we just, as I said, we just wouldn't take no as an answer, and that was our mentality. And I say this a lot of the time, like, if we were in the drinks industry, we never would have come up with CanO Water because it's so stupid to most people in the drinks industry. But it needed, you know, three people, naive idiots who basically were like, you know, we were all sort of dropouts in our own right, and it was like it needed the three of us to sort of come together and be like, all right, we're doing this. And I think that, you know, that is the sort of the start of where this disruptive mentality began.
Okay. Interesting. So then what were the first steps in terms of investment and interest? How did you start? Who did you approach? I can imagine that was quite kind of scary to think of. Yeah,
do you know what? Our journey was very weird, and it was very, like, it was like it was meant to be, because there was a lot of negativity, but then there was also a lot of things that just happened. And I'd like go into a bit of detail. No one had ever in the world put water in a can, so we had to create that. You know, we also couldn't taste water in a can, and no one had ever filled cans of water, so we had to basically create the let's just say, like, the hamster wheel for the next people, really, who now are putting water in cans because it had never been done. So we created the blueprint, in essence, and we called everyone, every co-packer, so people that fill products in cans all across the world, and no one was willing to do it. So we went on a journey, and as I said before, like within the mentor type side of things, we would call up someone who couldn't do it, who knew someone, and that person couldn't do it, but they knew someone. It was like that sort of like, we've got to go on a journey, and as I said, we can't take no as an answer, and we're going for it. And that really was the journey for the first sort of 6 to 8 months. And what we did, that, you know, looking back now, and I have a lot of entrepreneurs and founders who come to me and they say, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to get from A to Z. And it's like, I say to them, you don't need to get from A to Z, you just need to get from A to B, and you need to decide what that is. You need a map, you need a, you know, what is the next step. And what we did is we basically created a brand that didn't exist, because what we needed about 60 or 70,000 pounds, because in order to fill and print on cans, you need 150,000 units of each. So we needed 150,000 still and 150,000 sparkling. So that was 300,000 cans that we needed before we could even take a sip of water in a can. Yeah. And that was scary.
Terrifying.
You know, I was funding it with my DJ money, which wasn't a lot. So it was like I was bootstrapping the business. I was putting like £500 here, £600 here. I would, by the end of the month, have zero in my bank account, and I would need like my next DJ job, or I was working in events at the time, and it was scary. And what we did, we basically said to our can manufacturers, we were like, we need cans. Like, we can't go out and And they were like, well, we can't give you cans of water, but we have a resealable lid. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but we found a resealable lid on page 10 of Google, which was had never been used before. It was a complete fluke. And we launched with this resealable lid, and the resealable lid company basically said, listen, if you give us £500, we'll send you 500 cans. It won't be, they'll just be silver cans, so no branding on it, and it will be filled with sparkling lemongrass, a sparkling lemongrass drink. But you can brand them, and you can make out as if it's your prototype.
Okay.
So what we basically did is we created this incredible brochure that looked amazing of this fake brand that didn't exist called CanO Water, and we got these 500 cans of sparkling lemongrass, and what we did is we would go to work at our full-time jobs. We'd come home and every evening we would basically create this conveyor belt where one of us would masking tape the top of the can, one of us would spray paint the can, either black or white, and then the last one would wrap the can with a vinyl.
Sure.
And it would basically look like this. It was like, here's
Produced
our can of water.
Yeah.
So what we did is we basically started sending out emails to people, and the first two people that we sent out to was London Fashion Week and Selfridges. And we basically we went in as if we had this product when we didn't, and it was that typical fake it to make it mentality.
Yeah.
It was like we had nothing. We just had this fake thing, and we just waited. We had no money, we had no investors. I remember going into the kitchen once at my family home, and my sister turned around to my dad and said something like, what is he doing? It's just the most stupid idea. Like, who is going to buy a can of water? And lo and behold, after 2 weeks, London Fashion Week emailed us back, and they basically said, we're obsessed with this, we want you to be the main sponsors of London Fashion Week. And we were like, fuck, how on earth are we gonna, we've got no product or any brand. And Selfridges emailed us, and we talk about weird moments. Selfridges emailed us saying, hi guys, can you come in ASAP for a meeting? And we were like, this is the weirdest thing. And we went in for a meeting, and the buyer turned around and he said, I've just joined Selfridges a week ago. My first project is, by the head of Selfridges, the owner of Selfridges, is to get rid of all plastic bottles. If you had emailed me a week, if you had emailed Selfridges 2 weeks before, you would have probably, or a year before, you would have got ignored, and a year later you would have been too late.
Yeah.
You emailed me the week I joined, and it was like that mad moment of wow.
Yeah.
And I think at that point we were like, wow, we're gonna be massive entrepreneurs, and we're gonna sell out, and they're gonna buy the 300,000 cans that we need, and they bought 200 cans from us. But it enabled us to get investment, our first round of investment. And I think that investment for us was a journey, but we used the Selfridges and the London Fashion Week piece to basically, we used that as a vehicle to go to the next level. So when I talk about that not going from A to Z, it was that A to B that got us to that to C. And I think that my learnings were to just go with it, and not just, if we had just tried to get investment, we never would have got it. So we had to get that piece to get to the next stage.
Absolutely. And having events like Fashion Week, that helps, right? So that's marketing.
Massively. And I think that, we never knew what journey we were going on. We had no idea we were so naive. And, I was 22 years old. I had a failed business when I was 19, which it was in events. It was an incredible business. I had no business experience, so it failed mainly because of a family problem, and there was an issue with my co-founder as well. It just didn't work out. But I'd experienced failure, which for me was the greatest thing to ever happen, because I learned so much about me, and I learned a lot about how important it is to when that business failed, I never saw light at the end of the tunnel. I never thought I'd get anything else, and I was severely depressed after that. And I think what I've learned now is actually just keep going and embrace failure. So the event, like I didn't know what was going to happen, but what did happen after the after Fashion Week and Selfridges and all those things is it enabled us to get the investment, and it enabled us to create this brand. But it was from that moment on, it was probably the hardest 3 or 4 years that I've ever endured after that.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
And notoriously, supermarkets are a difficult market to get products on shelves. How did you manage to get it stocked?
I think that it's important, but before we got the supermarkets, I think that the supermarkets are hard to get, but when you've got a can of water and people think that you're mental, which I'll talk about that because I think that that's an incredibly important part of the journey. Getting in anywhere is hard. It isn't as easy as something like, oh yeah, we've created this product and you can see 100 of them and we've just got a new design. It's imagine calling up someone and telling them that you've got a can of water and they can't see what it looks like, what it feels, what it tastes like. We had Selfridges, we had London Fashion Week, and for 3 years we literally got laughed at. And it was so the supermarkets bit is something that people always say, oh Josh, you've absolutely smashed it, you're in Tesco's and you're here. And I'm like, you just don't understand. Like, first of all, you don't understand how we got there, the pain and the suffering and the reality, and how difficult it is to deal with those people. But it's actually, they're not the accounts that we are proud of. The ones that we're actually proud of are the bread and butter, small independent cafes and all those types of things, because they're actually the people that took the leap.
Making the jump.
They're the ones, and my experience was, an honest experience, is start work in the morning, call 100 people, 99 of them would laugh down the phone, one of them would think about it, and I would most probably go home. One of us would probably go home either in tears or basically saying to each other, we can't come back tomorrow because, and we would use each other to lean on because it was so difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I learnt that's where I got my thick skin from. Because when I first started CanO Water, I didn't have the thick skin I have today. I got upset extremely easily, and I think as anyone in business knows, every single day you have to deal with shit, and it might look like it's all great, but 10 shit things happen and 1 good thing happens, and that's just the reality for us. Like the highs are the highs are high, but the lows are really, really low. And I think that's made me a much better all-rounded person. But there was a massive turning point, and I like to talk about this because I think it's a point in CanO Water's journey that has really, really helped. Like that I like to talk about, because I think that it's a good story to show that if you keep banging away and if you keep chipping away, it makes it all worth it. But for 3 years, we were getting nowhere. We were building this little brand that me and the 2 boys thought that, the 3 of us thought, oh my God, Stormzy's holding a can, or, some random person that no one knows that we knew because it was cool was holding a can. The reality is no one knew CanO Water. No one knew who it was, no one was seeing it. And we brought in a managing director, and he looked at the numbers and he was like, listen boys, you've got something, like you do have something, but the reality is the business is going insolvent. You're not really getting anywhere, no one's really buying it, the sales are shit. you can build the brand, but you're just going to run out of money.
Yeah.
And you're going to need to keep diluting, and you're raising money. It's just not going to work. And are you even going to raise money? With it. So he basically said, and I've been everything at CanO Water. I've been the guy in the warehouse building the pallets, to the operations person, the salesperson. I've been everything at CanO Water. I sweep the floors if I have to, and I've always been that yes man person. And I did a deep dive and very much got involved in the operations, and me and my MD, basically, we looked at it and we said, we've got 6 months, and if we don't turn things around in 6 months, we hang our hats up high, we accept that, we've done our absolute best, but it just didn't work, and we just have to accept it. And even though it would kill me and it would be another failure, we went in for it, and we did our absolute best, and that was a really painful thing to accept. But we went on we just gave it our all, and on the 5th month, I remember I was actually sitting in bed a few nights before and thinking, like, planning my next journey, my next project,
business.
I had no money really. I was DJing, but CanO had taken over. And on the 5th month, David Attenborough did Blue Planet. And I'll never forget it. Like, everything felt like a waste of time. It never felt like we were planting a seed. It just felt like the garden was just never growing. Like you were planting the seed, and it was just fucked.
Nothing to show for it.
On the last month, David Attenborough did Blue Planet, and I'll never forget it. There was this episode of Blue Planet where this whale had died, and its child was crying in the water, and it died from plastic pollution. And I remember getting a call from a friend of mine being like, "Mate, tomorrow your life's going to change, I'm telling you." And I just was like, yeah, whatever, because I was so used to negativity. I was so used to the shit of being laughed down the phone and thinking that, are we flogging a dead horse? Are we the only people that believe in this? And when I tell you that the next 48 hours and for the next month was just mental, it was incredibly powerful for me as a person, to see that every single person that we had ever called was calling us up and saying, I know that I laughed down the phone at you, but we've gone on the same journey as you, and we actually can also see that cans are a lot more recyclable. And it was like, fuck, the seed that we planted actually started growing. And we actually started to see, there's a visual post that I saw years ago of this guy with a hammer, and he's hammering through dirt, and you can see that there's a diamond, but he can't see it. And there's another picture of him walking away from it, but you can see that he's so close to it, but he can't see it. And me and my business partner Ariel used to always say, like, we're on the cusp, and that really for us, was it. And we were so close to turning away, and we were so close to just not going to the next level. And from 2015 to 2018, we had only sold like a few 100,000 cans, which in the grand scheme of it was it's literally zero. And in 2019 we sold 12 million cans.
Wow.
So we went from just being the most stupid fad ever to being this business that actually had substance. And I think for myself as a founder, I'd never felt prouder, but I also as an individual that suffered severely from mental health and all these different like just a massive imposter syndrome, it gave me that kick of actually, maybe I actually have got something to offer.
Yeah. So we have David Attenborough to thank for everything.
Thanks, David. I've met him and thanked him a few times. He's
Good.
A lovely guy.
Good. So obviously you reached that success. I want to talk about this new relaunch. You've just
redesigned
CanO Water 2.0.
Yeah.
Why the relaunch?
So I think that we've learned when launching CanO Water, it was very much. My business partner Perry is an incredible designer, real visionary when it comes to the look and feel of things, and he designed a great can, but it was very much what we believed it should look like. So the old can, if you guys haven't seen it, it's got a sort of very small logo here, and it's very minimalistic, a bit too cool, and it didn't emphasise on CanO, which is obviously the name of the brand. And I think we when starting CanO Water, we didn't have any. We couldn't scream and shout about CanO because. Who the fuck's CanO? Do you know what I mean? Who is CanO? We had to tell everyone that this product is not a beer, it's not an energy drink. Yes, actually, really, this is a can of water. And people were like, whoa, is it mad? Me and my business partner, Ariel, we'd be at events and we'd hand out cans to people. And we used to have a game where we would read people's lips after they got a can. And the response was always like, you can imagine, like, what on earth is this? This is pathetic. And then it was funny to watch people's journeys because like an hour later they would come back and they'd be like, you know what, I thought that this was so stupid. And now, so that's always people's journey. It's always like this circle where they start very confused and then they think about it and actually like, yeah, it makes sense. Like a bit of a light bulb moment. Yeah. But this relaunch is probably the biggest thing that we've done to date. And one of the reasons is to make more noise on CanO, obviously the brand. And the logo is very small, and we've had everyone from Bill Gates, Drake, Ed Sheeran, everyone holding our can, and they always hold it covering the logo. So we've made it very apparent by putting, logos on every single side. And this is an evolution as well. And we're not the only canned water out there anymore. Our vision from day one has always been to remove 1 billion plastic bottles within the next 10 years by, replacing them with infinitely recyclable cans, and to also inspire other people to put their water into cans. We want the Cokes of the world. We want the Evians of the world to put water in a can. They are doing it. They're not stopping their enormous plastic production. And that's because they make more money from plastic and their margins and their companies are geared for plastic. And we scare them enormously, and they're not going into fully cans anytime soon, which is a massive, massive shame. So we need to make more noise around the name CanO Water because that's who we are, and we're proud to we need to scream and shout more about it.
Yeah. So you're not scared of competition? It's part of it. It's.
I think that the first time I saw a competitor brand, I didn't sleep for 3 nights, and I just was petrified because how horrible is it to feel like you're the first people to, and don't get me wrong, we're not a global brand. We still haven't, we've accomplished things, but I'm still in a risky business. It's not like I'm getting on my yacht. This is very, I only a year ago I couldn't pay my mortgage. So it's not. It's not all sunshine, and I think I actually like talking about that because I think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that don't talk about that, and I think it's actually very important to talk about that. But competition is scary. It also fuels me to do better. What doesn't scare me about competition is me and my team, because these people have got all the money in the world, but their marketing is shit. And water is the sleepiest industry. It's not like energy drinks. It's not like the soft drinks market where people are going mad. It is, if I asked anyone what was the last thing that they saw from a water brand, they're probably going to say the shit Evian advert of a baby dancing 10 years ago. If any of you saw it. That is that's who we're up against.
Yeah.
So all we've got to do is just wake it up, and that's what kind of I remember I sat in a meeting with the owner of, I'm going to say it because I don't really care, I never used to say it, but the owner of Innocent Smoothies. I sat in a meeting with him and he laughed me out the room in the beginning of CanO Water because he said, why would anyone want to drink from a can? The plastic problem's not that bad. because he sells shitloads of plastic. It looks good, but you'll never get into Tesco. 2 months ago, I got invited to Innocent Smoothies head office to teach all of their creative and marketing team how to build an organic brand, because they're cutting budgets and they needed me, little CanO Water, and I think that's the mentality of a lot of corporate people. That's why competition doesn't necessarily scare me from the big corporates, because the way that they think is actually 10 years ago. But we've always got to be thinking 10 steps ahead, because if I didn't think about competition, then we will get overtaken very, very easily. And there are some amazing brands out there that are in cans, water, that are doing amazing things. And I've also accepted that we might be on the shelf alongside 10 other canned waters, just like you see Evian, Buxton, Highland Spring, all of these, and there's probably 20 brands that I could tell you that are 50 to 100 million pound businesses that you wouldn't even know of. They're not even brands.
Yeah.
So I think that the days of me getting scared are still here, but it fuels me to make sure that me and my team are 10 steps ahead when it and especially in the world that we live in now. I actually think that we scare them a lot more, because we are a lot more well versed when it comes to today's society.
It's motivational, but then also you're going for the same goal, right? It's to eliminate plastic. Right. You mentioned, I'm not sure if you want to reveal, but you have an investor who's kind of been silent for a while, but did you want to?
We today actually we've announced that Ricky Gervais is one of our new investors that's come into the business. He's invested a large portion in our latest round. It's for me, it's incredibly powerful for myself and the other founders to have someone of that caliber come in. For us, we always thought that it was just us. So to have people like him, and there will be some other very large names that we'll be mentioning in the next couple of months that will also be coming in. He's just the first, and he's sort of he's given us the green light to talk about it. But for people like Ricky, who get presented an idea, 100 ideas a week, to get involved in the business, and for someone like him who cares about the environment and animals, to get involved, it's really, really motivating, as well. Our chairman is the ex-president. He was there for 30 years, the ex-president of Heineken. He came on board last year, and it has been a massive inspiration. The caliber of people, whether it be venture capitalists, people that have been in private equity, or even just very successful angel entrepreneurs, is really, really insightful, and really, gives myself and the other guys the confidence that we're on the right track, and we're creating an incredible brand.
Absolutely. And before we open it up to questions, obviously One Club, we're based on community. How important is community, or how important has it been for the development of CanO Water?
I think it's massively important. So I grew up in a community environment, and I've always seen massive positives within community, especially with leveraging, and not just leveraging from a sense of using, but more of a helping each other. And I think that is massively important. One thing that I've always seen as a gift of mine is one of my strengths is I can get anything done, anything. I only really saw that power come into fruition in the past sort of 6-7 years, once I started to gain, or 5-6 years, when I started to gain a lot more confidence within CanO Water. But I think that I go out to my community and the people that I meet. that's sort of like in my own personal networking sort of community, I think it's massively important, because it will take you 10 times longer to do it yourself sometimes. And sometimes all you have to do is just pick up the phone. And that can be really scary sometimes, because you might get a little bit nervous about what are people going to think, but actually 90% of the time, people just want to help you.
Problem shared,
I actually think that exactly. And I think that is like one of the biggest mind switches for me, is everyone comes to me and I never go to anyone. And I've learned now that actually, I also need to go out more. And I've started to. So, I think community is incredibly important, and how amazing is it to be able to have a community and have people to talk to and people to network with, and I think it's
feel supported
massively.
Yeah,
massively.
Let's open it up to some questions. Yes, Adam.
How important was sourcing the water? So you speak obviously about the can, you speak about the CanO Water.
For sure.
Surely that must have been a big part, like getting the water right and that sort of process.
Good question. So it was a funny one, because we landed in our source, but it also was very important. So we originally wanted UK water, because we're from the UK, it makes more environmental sense, etc., etc. But we also wanted a really good quality water, because I think that is massively important, especially when it comes to brand within the UK. So price is very important, brand is very important, and also source is very important. We called everyone worldwide. Can you can water? Can you can water? No, we can't. No, we can't. Two reasons is because this has a still can of water. If you didn't do certain things, this can would just be flimsy. So what happens is you need a shot of nitrogen that goes in the can. So when you open a can, it goes tss, and that's because it's got a shot of air that basically keeps the can rigid and hard like this. Whereas on a sparkling can, obviously the carbonation keeps it. So that was one thing. Secondly, you need to give the pipes an acidic clean, because if you imagine what is going through the pipes on an everyday basis, energy drinks, orange juice, Coca-Cola, if you put water through those pipes and they haven't been cleaned, our water would just taste of a touch of orange juice or a touch of Red Bull. And it's happened to a lot of brands who have made this mistake. So it was incredibly important for us to find the people that could do it properly. Otherwise, we'll just end up having hurdles every left, right and centre. And that's what's happened with a lot of brands that have tried it. They've gone to places that they've just taken a punt, they've done it, their water tastes of blueberry, and then they've then got an insurance claim on their hands. So we made sure very meticulously that things were done proper. It just happened, and this is another weird moment, that the resealable lid people that we had found were 5 miles away from the only people in the world that actually told us that they would can water. And they had a spring on their land that was incredible Austrian Alps spring water, that they sent us some water and it tasted incredible. And the cans also were 10 miles away from where they were made. So even though they were coming from Austria and they weren't coming from the UK, whereas a lot of people in the UK, the water's coming from there and the bottle's coming from there, and we accepted that actually we either can't get over this hurdle because it's not as environmental as we'd want it to be, and CanO Water will never begin because we can't get it in the UK, or we just do it. And we were very fortunate that, we tasted the water. The water was absolutely incredible. The people that actually put the water in the cans are the people that can for Red Bull in Austria. They are an incredible organisation that basically looked at the 3 of us boys as complete lunatics for putting water in a can, and half of the people, I don't know if anyone knows any Austrians here, but they would just laugh down the phone at us. It was just the weirdest thing of like, ha ha ha, it would never work, but why not, we'll do it. And it was just that type of like, it was very weird mentality, but they actually liked us. And they basically, they said to us, you know what, we want you to succeed. And they now use us as a bit of a pilot because, and as a bit of a case study, because it's funny. Now there's probably about 50 brands. There's probably about 500 or 600 million cans of water that are being made with them now because of us. And it's that's funny. So the water is incredibly important, and the funny thing is, so many UK co-packers come to us now and they say, oh yeah, we can do this. The water is massively important. Would we bring it here? No company in the UK right now can get the best quality, get a better quality of water for the price that we need, and also that can meet our demands, because we are making probably anything from 30 to 40 million cans a year. And no one can keep up with demand. The only place that can is the place that we luckily started with in Austria.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it tastes really good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Have you done any research in terms of the impacts of it? Does the aluminium impact the water anyway? So we were talking about the properties that are in the water.
For sure. So one of the things that, so it's funny, there's like a rumour that's out there, but it's not really a cleared rumour. It's basically, some people say that there's a plastic lining in cans. It's something that has been going around for many, many years. It's not a plastic lining. It's basically like, it's a lacquer, so it's a glue. And what that is it protects us from any sort of, any nasties that go into the water. So drinking out of cans is very, very, very safe. And that is massively important. One of the things to mention as well, with plastic bottles, there are health implications. You might have heard, or you might have seen, if you leave a plastic bottle in your car overnight and it's been hot, you'll see that it's become very murky, and all of the water has sort of stuck to the edge of the bottle. That's because the heat has basically caused that to happen, and that's where carcinogenics can sometimes leach into the water. And you might have heard of BPA. So that's an ingredient called bisphenol, which is within plastic. And one of the greatest things about cans, and one of the reasons why we always were very sort of confident about cans, is heat and light can't penetrate a can. So even with the lacquer inside, the heat and the light can't even get into that. So it's very, very safe. The properties are very safe. And that was a big thing for us, because us as individuals were incredibly cautious about the health implications with plastic, because there are a lot of sort of things around the plastic, the health implications. We wanted to make sure, like, what is it versus an aluminium can?
Thank you.
Talking about health, who came up with the idea, or how did you guys come up with the idea of building a plastic bottle from a human blood?
So that was an April Fool's joke. But I'm glad we got you. Me and my creative agency came up with that. And the reason what we did is we did an April Fool's joke that was basically the world's first plastic bottle made out of human microplastics. And the reason why it actually isn't funny is because we all have microplastics in us, and they've done studies, and it's in tap water, and it's in the air, and it's in our stools, and that is something that is fact. It's not. This isn't a myth. This is something, and it's a scary. I think that I can't remember the exact statistic, but I think within a month we ingest a credit card worth of plastic.
That's disgusting.
Which is disgusting, and that is because of how much plastic and microplastics. I actually went to a Cornwall beach, and the whole beach, without fail, one of the people said to me, "What do you think of the beach?" I was like, "Yeah, what about it?" She was like, "It's amazing. It's all sand, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, it looks a bit weird colour." She was like, "Yeah, none of it's sand anymore. That's all microplastics. It's all plastic." And when you actually,
So what was the colour of the sand?
It wasn't a sandy colour. It was
Right.
just weird. And I think it was called I can't remember the word. It was I can't remember what the word was. But she basically showed me with a sieve. She basically put it in the sand, then went over to the water, and it was just all plastic, tiny specks of plastic everywhere. And that's what's happening, and that's the problem with plastic that a lot of people don't talk about. Is what happens is, if anyone doesn't know, you'll see Coca-Cola, you'll see Evian, you'll see all these brands saying that their product is recyclable. Plastic is recyclable. That's where they get us. Is it getting recycled? There's a big difference between recyclable and recycled. That's where the greenwashing happens, all this fake bullshit of, yes, it's recyclable. So we as consumers are like, oh, it's recyclable. But what happens is, when you recycle a can, it never loses its quality, and it will always come back as another can. So this can will just become another can. Plastic bottle, you recycle it once, and it might come back as another plastic bottle, but what will happen is that the colour will get murkier and murkier and murkier. That's why, I don't know if any of you saw Sprite went from a green bottle to a white bottle, because they basically, they couldn't do the green bottle anymore because of recycling. And what happens is if you really, really don't want to drink out of a plastic bottle that's been recycled more than 5 or 6 times, because it is so dirty, and it gets murkier and murkier, that the plastic industry basically can't sell it anymore, because you would look at the plastic as, you'd look at it as, that's disgusting, it looks filthy. And so what happens is they then go and try and make shoelaces or park benches or they start doing things in the roads or tyres, and over time what happens is that those things start to break, and they start to form these microplastics that basically end up everywhere. Whereas a can will always become a can, plastic it's just going to end up, and has ended up, everywhere. And the smaller it gets, it just becomes particles that we end up eating, that's in our fish and that we can't even see. And that's basically where that April Fool's post came from. Exactly.
It's obviously effective.
Exactly.
I think we'll end it there. Can everybody join me in thanking Josh White?
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Redefined podcast. We want to bring you the best stories from the top changemakers across the globe. To make that possible, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening and leave a comment or review. It really is that simple. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you for the next episode.